It's one of the most high-profile murder trials in recent memory, and today both sides wrapping up their closing arguments. It's one step closer to finishing. The fate of accused mushroom murderer Erin Patterson now in the hands of a dozen jurors.
35 days, 50-plus witnesses, one accused murderer on trial. Erin Patterson charged with murdering her estranged husband's parents, Don and Gail Patterson, and his auntie, Heather Wilkinson, as well as the attempted murder of Heather's husband, Ian. The prosecution's key argument that Erin Patterson faked a cancer diagnosis to lure her guests to lunch, deliberately poisoning them with the death cap mushrooms she had foraged and hidden in individual beef Wellingtons. Erin eating her meal off a different coloured plate from the others. While the defence admits Erin Patterson had foraged mushrooms and that there were death cap mushrooms in the lunch, it says Patterson
did not deliberately serve poisoned food to her guests. What happened was a tragedy and a terrible accident. She's innocent.
Today, her defence wrapped up its closing arguments, outlining holes in the prosecution's, quote, dangerous and seductive case, arguing Patterson's lies and actions after the guests became sick were purely due to panic.
People were blaming her, understandably, because whichever way you look at it, it was her fault. She starts panicking and she starts lying at that point.
Earlier, accusing the prosecution of being selective with its evidence.
The prosecution's just made an argument to you. That's not evidence. The prosecution has referred selectively to the evidence, choosing the bits they like to suit their theory in a very deliberate way.
Erin Patterson has pleaded not guilty to all charges.
For the latest on the case, crime and justice reporter for The Age, Erin Patterson, was in court today. Erin, the defence today was accusing the prosecution of being selective with its evidence. What were they referring to?
Colin Mandy SC was essentially telling the jury that the prosecution have cherry-picked the evidence that they have collected as part of the police investigation and only told them parts of it and really not relied on other parts of it. Now, this includes text messages between Erin Patterson and her family, also Facebook messages between Erin Patterson and her online friends, and some of the evidence that Erin Patterson's two children gave, recorded evidence they gave that was played during the trial. He said essentially that the prosecution were picking the pieces that suited their case and potentially leaving out others, and he was quite critical of the way that they were doing that.
The defence also refuted 4 key propositions that the prosecution had presented. Can you take us through those?
Yeah, they refuted that Erin Patterson would kill anybody without a motive. He said this was quite absurd to think that anybody would do that. And without a motive, his argument was to the jury, there really is no intent, no reason for her to have killed her lunch guests. He also refuted the fact that the cancer claim that she made allegedly on the prosecution case was used as a ruse or a bit of a lure to get her lunch guests to attend the lunch. The defence maintained Erin Patterson, as she said in her evidence, wanted to grow closer to the 4 lunch guests that were invited, and that was the reason for the lunch. They also refuted and said that it was a really absurd suggestion by the prosecution that Erin Patterson would ever believe that her lunch guests would take this health lie, this illness lie that the jury have been told by the prosecution she was telling the lunch guests at the lunch to their graves. He said that it was just the most absurd thing that the prosecution could ever allege, and it wasn't something that Erin Patterson ever thought of. And the fourth and final proposition that they refuted today was what Mandy said was this illogical proposition that Erin Patterson would ever try and pass off 3 of the lunch guests dying as some sort of strange case of gastro. We know that the prosecution say it was Erin Patterson's intent to kill it and all make the lunch guests very seriously unwell. And that was something else that the prosecution, the defence, strongly said to the jury, that is definitely not the case. Our client is innocent and you should find her innocent.
Erin, what's still to happen before the jury comes back with a verdict?
So we are at 35 days, 35 sitting days of this trial now. And when Colin Mandy sat down after giving his closing address, that's the last that we will hear from the barristers that are sitting at the bar table, the prosecution and defence. Now, the judge, Christopher Beale, turned to the jury at the end of this today and thanked them for their patience and their attendance and said for the next 4 days, they will have a long weekend. What he said they should think of as an extra Easter weekend. And at this time, he said said that there were some legal things that needed to take place and they didn't need to be here for that. And he told them that they should return at 10:30 next Tuesday, where his charge will begin. And guys, this is where he takes the jury through some different legal propositions and explains to them some instructions on what they should do when they finally go out to deliberate on a verdict.
All right, we'll see what happens from there. Erin, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, guys.